The offshore oil rig is about 16 stories high and as wide as 2 football fields, and it weighs an incredible amount more than an aircraft carrier. The oil platform, called the Apometics, is currently located in the Gulf of Mexico, 130 kilometers off the coast of Louisiana in North America. But its journey began a few years ago, thousands of miles away in South Korea, where thousands of workers and engineers were busy building the platform. After 7 years of hard work, when the Apometics was ready, the engineers faced a challenge they had never faced in their careers. The problem was, this huge structure had to be transported from South Korea to the Gulf of Mexico, and for this, the world's largest marine transport ship was brought in. Lifting the Apometics onto that ship was a task that was expected to take at least 7 days. But suddenly they learned that a storm had formed in the Pacific Ocean, which had developed into a super typhoon. This type of typhoon occurs once in 20 years, and with a wind speed of 315 kilometers per hour, it could hit the South Korean coast any time in the next 60 days. And we all know that a super typhoon causes a lot of damage wherever it hits. The challenge for workers, engineers, and transport specialists was to do this 7-day job in just 3 days. That is, if the Apometics could not be lifted from the shipyard and loaded onto a marine vessel within 3 days, then years of hard work could be wasted in an instant. This was a problem that shook the entire management from the bottom to the top. This oil platform was the biggest project of the Shell Oil Company, and that was because they had no room for even a small mistake. In order to avoid the super typhoon and send the Apometics ahead of time, it was very important to complete the rest of the work, for which an additional force of workers was called. The workers worked day and night to prepare the Apometics for transport as quickly as possible. On the other hand, the management, in conjunction with the Meteorological Administration, was monitoring the movement of the super typhoon. They had a hope that the typhoon would change its direction, but their hopes were dashed when they learned that the typhoon was heading straight for South Korea from the Pacific Ocean. The workers worked hard, completing all the work on the Apometics in just 3 days. Now the task was to lift the huge structure and place it on the floating dock. The entire structure weighed an incredible 41,000 tons. So much steel was used in the construction of the Burj Khalifa, not even the amount used in this oil platform. With the help of large hydraulic jacks, it was pushed 1 inch at a time and placed on the floating dock. With the help of tugboats, the floating dock was moved away from the shipyard, where it would be loaded onto a marine vessel. It was the world's largest marine transport ship, capable of easily carrying 98,000 tons, and it was on it that the Apometics was taken to the other side of the world, to the Gulf of Mexico. The next morning, the Apometics was lowered from the floating dock. This time, the oil platform began to float on the water for the first time. With the help of tugboats, the platform was pulled into deeper water, where this marine ship was already waiting. On the other hand, the super typhoon was rapidly moving towards South Korea, and a knife was hanging over the management's head. Now, the super typhoon was only 48 hours away, and as time passed, its signs were showing in the sea. The wind and wave speed in the sea were increasing, which was a danger signal for the Apometics. The next moment was very sensitive. Loading the oil platform onto the ship was a very complicated task. For this, the ship first started taking water into its water tanks, which caused it to go underwater. Then the tugboats pull the oil platform onto the ship, and finally, the ship pumps out the water, causing it to rise to the surface. But this is not as easy as you see in this animation. It requires calm seas. Because if this is done in waves, the Apometics will not be loaded onto the ship properly, and this can be dangerous for both the ship and the Apometics.
The sea was very rough due to the super typhoon. The waves and strong winds made this task impossible. On the other hand, time was running out, and the stress level of the entire team was very high. Fortunately, the meteorological department gave the team only 2 hours the next morning, so that there was a chance that the sea would be completely calm. If the task could not be done in these 2 hours, then there would be no chance later. The super typhoon was now only 36 hours away. In the morning, as it was said, the sea was completely calm. At the first opportunity, the oil platform was towed onto the vessel, and the vessel lifted it out of the water. Many hours before the super typhoon, Apometics was able to say goodbye to South Korea. Shell had managed to complete the first challenge by saving their oil platform from the super typhoon. But that did not mean that there would be no more challenges. After a few months of travel, the oil platform was unloaded again in South Texas, as 4 modules were being built there. The modules were fitted one by one onto the platform and once again sent to its destination 130 kilometers away, where it would remain for the next 40 years. After 7 years of hard work, the moment finally came when Apometics had to be connected to the oil well 30,000 feet below. Where Apometics was floating, the seabed was 7,400 feet deep. That's deep enough to fit about 3 Burj Khalifas. But the oil well that Apometics had to be connected to was surprisingly 22,600 feet below that depth. The water pressure at this depth is too high for a human to go and complete any mission there. So, it was decided to use a remotely operated underwater vehicle to connect Apometics to the oil well opening on the seabed. The installation crew, who were installing the underwater pipelines from a separate platform, sent the ROV into the sea using a crane. This was a very complex job, where the pipeline had to be lowered right over the opening of the oil well. At 7,400 feet down, the ROV operator on top was in control of the job, so precisely that he was completing the mission like it was a video game. Fortunately, this job was done right the first time. Now it was time to transfer the pipe from the installation platform to the Apometics. This process is called a riser transfer, where 4 separate vessels work together. First, a train is pulled out of the Apometics. Then the ROV takes that train to a second vessel. This vessel tows it to the second platform. And finally, the train from the Apometics is pulled to bring the pipe to them. Then the drilling work began. The pipe had to be drilled thousands of feet down from the seabed, about 22,600 feet down, to the oil well. After several months of drilling, the pipe finally reached the oil well. Now it was time to pump the oil. The entire team gathered to witness this moment, and with the push of a button, the oil pump was started. Everyone was happy when the oil was pumped for the first time from 30,000 feet below. The 7 years of hard work of the workers, engineers, and management had paid off. The flow of oil and its quality were also absolutely perfect. Today, Apometics produces 175,000 barrels of oil per day, which is enough fuel to power 4 million cars every day. Shell believes that for the next 40 years, that is until 2060, Apometics will continue to produce oil in this way. I hope you will like and share this video. Thank you very much for your loving comments. See you again in the next great video.